Hello, Pastor Jummy. You are welcome.
Thank you, Pastor Yemi. It's a pleasure to be there. We're here with you.
Thank you. Thank you. We are looking forward to hosting you very soon. More than anything, I and the ladies were excited to be hosting for the first time a virtual women's conference. We've been having conferences for 30 years, but this is the first time we'll be having a virtual one. It's exciting, it's scary, it's everything together. But we're believing God that it's going to be well worth all the things that we've put into it. But more than anything, to have you on board, the team that are going to be blessing women in those 2 days, it's a joy. It's a joy.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'm going to introduce you officially to viewers that do not know much about you. I'm just going to introduce Pastor Jummy. Jumoke Dawodu is a senior health management professional with over 34 years experience of working in the public sector, predominantly in the NHS. And aren't we proud of the NHS, girls?
Absolutely. Right now, yes.
Yeah. She has a passion for mentoring aspiring professionals in reaching their full potential. She works currently as a director of operations in the biggest community health trust in London. Wow. Jummy also serves as an associate pastor on top of that in Oasis Chapel in Charlton, London, with her husband, Dr. Dawodu, the bishop himself. Honestly, there's no better person that I would have loved to invite to speak on the topic that we invited you to speak on, career leadership, than you, Pastor Jimmy. Yeah. But before I say anything about that, is there any other thing you want to say about yourself for the ladies?
I just see it as quite, sorry?
Or you think I've covered it?
I think you have covered it, yes, but you might want to ask me a few more questions and I'll elaborate further.
Okay, then, no problem. No problem. Like I was saying, there's no better person that I would have loved to invite for this conference than you. I haven't seen you over the years rise, to the ranks in your career. All the qualities, because when you're talking of career leadership is simply about building your influence and your impact, especially in the area of career that we're dealing with.
Yes.
Quite a number of things come together to make it difficult to rise in our respective careers. And, I know you have got what it takes. Everything that could come against you, have come against you. The challenges and everything have come against, and I've seen you face all these obstacles to still become who God has ordained for you to become. And we thank God for that. And I know there's a lot for women, especially people that are in the career line. There's a lot that they will learn, they'll be able to learn from you during the conference. So tell us about your experience in the area of career progression and how you have been able to achieve it, because you have achieved a lot, definitely. The eye up there in your career. I find it quite impressive.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure to be invited, and it's always a privilege to be able to share my journey. And I will start by saying that, everybody's journey starts at a particular point. It doesn't matter where you start that journey, it's where you end up that is the most important thing. And I just wanted to be very clear that no journey tends to be smooth. I don't know of anybody who has. They might say, oh yes, I started on day A and by day Z I was doing this and there was no hiccups along the way. I would challenge that if anybody said so. So my journey started, I chose to become a nurse, and I did that in Nigeria, University College Hospital, Nigeria. And as I qualified, because I was born in the UK, I just thought, I'll come back to the UK and everything would just be smooth sailing. I'll come in, they'll accept me for who I am, I'll get back into nursing and all will be well. But that wasn't what happened.
Okay.
So there are occasions, even at the beginning of that journey, it depends on who you speak to, who gives you counsel, who gives you advice.
Okay.
I'm not knocking the people I stayed with, but they didn't tell me anything. So I became like a glorified nanny. I just stayed at home helping with chores, not all the time because they had their own way of doing things, but I didn't know what to do, where to go, and how to deal with things. And I stayed in that for nearly a year. So even trying to sort out my registration in the UK, I didn't do much to make that happen. I just thought, you know, sending my papers and everything will come to be. But bearing in mind, you have to send all the documentation from the UK to Nigeria. This was before the internet. This was when, before the faxes. So everything had to be done by mail, and it took months for things to come back and forth. So the first year was quite difficult. And then a friend of mine came from Nigeria and said to me, have you done this? Have you done that? And I went, I didn't know how to do any of those things. How about you applying for a healthcare assistant role? And I'm thinking, I'm a registered nurse. Why would I do that? But she said, well, if you do that, at least you get some money and you get to know how the system works here. And actually, there are times when you have to speak to yourself and move away from what you know or what you think you're good at and just get the experience that you require at the time. And behold, when I did go to the hospital, it was very different from the way it worked in the UK, in Nigeria. So I learned, even though I wasn't a qualified person in the UK, but even doing that was hard because I knew I could do more than they were asking me to do. But they used to put me in my place and say, you're a healthcare assistant, that's not your role. So I had to learn to submit myself to whatever the roles were. So that was a difficult period for me. It enabled me to know that actually there are other staff who work in junior roles, and we need to respect the roles that they have. We need to respect what they do. And that was something that I really learned, that I would make sure that whatever role I was in, I would respect and honor every single person in whatever role they were in, whether they were more junior or more senior to me. So that was kind of the start of my journey.
I know you have a lot to say, and you're going to say everything during the conference, but just
sure.
In a nutshell, your experience, you know, rising to
yeah. Yeah. And no, I deliberately used that bit because if I hadn't done that work prior to getting my registration, who knows? Never have worked as a nurse in this country. And that's why I raised it. So you're right. I will talk more about what that really means and what that does to help. I got my registration. I started to work. I got a job. In those days, you virtually go for an interview and you start the work the next day. There was CBS, DBS, there was none of those things at the time. So you got into jobs, and I did. And I thought I'd landed. And so I just continued to work in this place at that ward. And I had no ambition. And then, you know, I did that for about a year. And then a bit later, I was thinking to myself, there must be other things to do. So I applied for another job. Like I said, you get into it really quickly. But I then thought I'll do night duty, because that way, if I do night duty, I can have my days to myself, and then I can do whatever I like, you know, it won't be a big deal. And I did that for about 3 years. And then I thought to myself, actually, you know, I'll end up like this all the way through. How do I get to a better place in my career? What do I need to do? And then I thought to myself, okay, I have a qualification from Nigeria. That's okay. But actually, I would need something for here. So then I went back to university. And university here is very different from university in Nigeria. In Nigeria, you kind of cram whatever it is and you give it back to them the way that, you know, they taught it to you. Here, you have to do analysis and synthesis, and you have to be able to argue your points, etc. So it was a very different way of learning. And in itself had its challenges, but it was a good challenge because it enabled me to move up wrong by wrong, up and up the ladder. It's not always about getting more education, but it does help. It's not always about what experience do you have. And sometimes we even, when we apply for a job and they ask us for our specification, we say, oh, I don't meet the criteria, so I won't bother. But there are other things you could do to demonstrate that you meet the criteria. So I learned over time to do the education side of things. I learned over time to understand the gaps in my knowledge, experience, and competencies, and find ways of meeting that. It also meant that sometimes I did things for free. I volunteered to do things. I became a school governor because I didn't have the skill set at the time in terms of managing budgets, in terms of being able to say that I was part of a board. So there are different things that people could do. They could become magistrates, they could become counselors, they could do all sorts of different things to enable them to pick up on the skill set that they need. So that helped me in the foundation of what I needed to do.
Thank you. Thank you. I know there's a lot for you to say. You know.
I'm holding back.
Let's not give them everything now.
Yeah, sure.
Now, yeah. Now, I know you're a career woman at top of your career, and you had to juggle the home front, keeping your family, family here, family everywhere, you know, Africa setting all over the place. And you've got the family of God. You're a pastor's wife.
Yes.
Well, even a pastor's wife, you are a pastor, a co-pastor, for crying out loud. That's a lot of work. So, but how have you found it? Because for you to be able to rise, you must have proven yourself. So how have you been able to juggle that?
I'll say first and foremost, I have a very supportive husband, because without it wouldn't happen. Even going to university and all that entails. I mean, you then can't be there for things you were there for before. I've also got people in church who really understood me, to take me for who I was and work me the way I could. There are also the joys, though, of the role of being a pastor and a pastor's wife, where there are certain roles in church where they expect you to take care of, regardless of whatever else you're going through. So you become the chief prayer warrior, you become the lead worshiper, you become the person who cooks for celebrations, you're the one who runs around and deals with hospitality issues, you go and see people in hospital, you do all of that on top of having a full-time job. But to God be the glory. It has made me stronger, it has enabled me to support others to go through this. And actually, it's a joy to be of service, a total privilege to serve the Lord in all aspects, including my circular role and that of being a pastor in his vineyard.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, can I ask you, I'm sure people will be wondering, career leadership, is that what we should be talking about now with this COVID-19, you know, staring us in the face? Oh, I just want to crawl into my bed and just wonder what tomorrow holds, you know. That's the mindset of a lot of people. So how do you think what we're doing right now and talking on the area of career, how do you think that's relevant to this season?
I think it's very relevant because it's given us time to pause. A lot of us have been running around helter-skelter. We always say, I don't have time. But you know the silver lining with COVID-19, because it's got a lot of things that are not so nice. We now have time to explore. We have time to seek advice. We have time to go on the internet and see what's available. We have time to be able to have mentoring and coaching sessions if that's what we need. And I feel that this is a time for us to just not say to ourselves, I have reached the peak, I can't get any further. Because people can start second and third careers now. And this is the time for them to consider those sort of things. So this conference will enable us to question ourselves. There are some of us who are happy what we're doing, and that's okay. Some people who have some dreams that they have not been able to achieve. And this is the time to fan them back into flame. And do it with the support that beautiful women in the conference will be able to support them to reach the pinnacle and to reach the top of what they would like to see and to get the desires of their heart met. So this is timely that we're able to have this conference to be able to go through these sort of issues and support our brethren to get there.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So what advice will you now give? For example, some people may, having watched this, they'll be thinking, okay, maybe I should think about my career and see what I can do. You know, how did this woman do it? Maybe they're thinking like that now. How would you prepare them for that event? What advice would you give them in advance? Like when I was speaking to one of our speakers that was coming to talk on social media, she advised them that they can go and do their research and come with their questions. So what kind of advice would you give to those who are getting ready to come on board to your session?
Okay. I think it's really good to be able to ask questions. So if there's for some research to be done in advance, that is done. But more importantly, there's some principles that each one of us just needs to consider. And those principles are the fact that you need to know where you want to go. And don't say to yourself, I can't get there. But there's something when you think, I don't know how I can get from where I am now to where I want to be. Look at, I would say to each person, if it's a job you are looking for, I want you to look at the job description of that particular job that is your desired job. Look at the person's specification, see what they're asking for, and start putting together answers to those different person specification bullet points that will be to for you to be able to say, I have met the criteria for this job. It might be that you don't meet all of them, can then come to the conference with questions about how can you get those met.
That's it.
It's that opportunity to assist how you can then fulfill those specification gaps that you feel that you need help with.
Yeah, thank you very much. One of the reasons we slotted that time for question and answer is we know that there isn't much you can say in 25 minutes. It's a lot. So we slotted that time in to give the ladies, time to really ask you what is really on their inside and really, open up to you. And I know you're going to be a blessing to them. You're going to be a great blessing.
I pray so in Jesus'
name. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation. And thank you to Bishop for letting you come. Thank you.
Absolutely. I will pass on your regards.
All right.
And my regards to Bishop too.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pastor Yemi. Okay.